So I got a good question from Rusty Shackleford 734 on TikTok. I put a video on there on uh, building biceps, all right, building muscle, and kind of doing a little bit of myth busting there, what it takes to get muscle to grow. And he had a good question for guys that have taken time off of training, probably in your mid 30s or older. Uh, I would say all the way up near mid 60s. This would apply to for maybe you had kids and you put training to the side and you haven't touched a weight in 10, 20 years. He asks, from the ages of 7 to 9, I lifted and I had good muscle mass, but 7 to 19, I lifted and I had good muscle mass, but I never could really build upon my base. I quit in college and just started back at 39. I just turned 40. I've noticed that I've been building muscle much more rapidly than before. I never take any supplements. And I told him, I responded, I said, there are many reasons, but it's common to put on a certain amount of muscle quickly early on when beginning your training as an adult, especially after taking some time off. And he says, okay, I was curious because I seem to be building faster than in my youth. I didn't know if it was easier once you're completely grown. Um, it's more about that first year of training than your youth versus your older age. That's the most important factor. That first year of training, you're going to put on, depending on the size of body you begin with. Okay, smaller guys will put on smaller amounts of muscle. Bigger guys will put on bigger amounts of muscle. It's all in proportion to your body and what amount of muscle mass it's designed to maintain. Okay, think Bruce Lee versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. All right, Bruce Lee was 5'5", 140 pounds. If he puts on 2 pounds of muscle, that's a significant amount of muscle for his body, his size. That's a lot. All right, if Arnold puts on 4 pounds of muscle, that's a good chunk of mass for his size. Okay, and it's in proportion. It's a ratio thing. Always keep that in mind. All right, if you're looking at a program and you're like it says I can put on 10 pounds of muscle, well, that's a loaded statement. Like we have to look at the individual to predict how much muscle you're going to put on. All right. What's super exciting, and I've seen it so many times it doesn't surprise me anymore, is the men and women who would join my gyms would uh, would pack on muscle very quickly in that first year to the point where the scale didn't move. And that's why I always tell people when you first start training and eating clean is don't put too much stock in what the scale says. All right. The effect that gravity has on your body doesn't tell you what's happening to your body. Doesn't tell you. All right. We don't know anything about the changes in your fat storage and the changes in your muscle mass, the changes in your bone density by measuring gravity. It doesn't tell us much at all. Okay, I've had many guys, many ladies too, who got shredded. Their clothes got loose. They had to buy new clothes, and the scale didn't change at all. I had a guy, and I use him. He's like one of my poster boys. I put his pictures up. He lost 2 pounds in a year, but he went from a visible beer gut to a six pack. And he was a bike rider, and he was crushing his all his records on the bike, his road bike. And what was cool is he didn't look like a bike rider. He was jacked. Okay. Um, so use that as encouragement, as something to be excited about, because it can be very daunting if I take 10, 20 years off to get started training again. It's like, oh, I've dug a hole so deep I can't get out of it. Yeah, you can, and you can get out of it pretty quick, and you'll be surprised at the personal records you set at mid 30s, mid 40s, mid 50s, even mid 60s, uh, compared to your youth. You're like, oh, I've had people crush their bench, their squat, their deadlift, certain metabolic conditioners, you know, that they couldn't even do at 19. Say your bench max was 225 at 19, and now we have you at 325 in your mid 40s, and you're strong and you're healthy, you're uninjured, you're unbreakable. Okay, if you do smart training. Okay, so uh, get excited about that. If you're an old dude like me, uh, it's it's still extremely productive to train. We are not destined to decrepitude. You don't fall apart as you get older unless you let yourself fall apart.